What is compassion?
Compassion. It's a human quality. It's a quality of human consciousness. So compassion is, you can be wisely compassionate, or you can be compassionate in a very ignorant way. Ignorant way is when you're traumatized. You're traumatized yourself, and you think whenever you see people who are in pain or traumatized in the same way, you find a response in yourself towards them. You act upon that response and you offer them that, but it is not pure compassion. It is emotional compassion, where you somewhat project yourself being in that situation, and then you're afraid or feeling sad about it. So it's an emotional compassion. True compassion, evolved compassion, you may say. The word true here, of course, it's true for everyone. If you're on a certain level of consciousness, whatever you experience is true for you. So the truth again varies. It can be ignorant truth, it can be ultimate truth. So the truth varies depending on the level of consciousness. So does compassion, love. All these understandings are man-made sort of perceptions because of dispersion. If you are on an evolved level, like where there's no dispersion, there's just being. Once that being disperses, you start seeing positive, negative, and you start taking sides. So compassion can be also kind of binding, attaching, especially if you start attaching your identity to the acts of compassion. Many people who are drawn to serve others, yet they are not really evolved. They usually create quite a big ego about their services, about their acts of compassion, and it becomes a spiritual, religious hypocrisy. So true compassion is not what you do, how you react, or what you show. Spiritual compassion is deep understanding of the root causes of people's sufferings and problems. If it's something, let's say, like you notice someone is in trouble and you spontaneously, selflessly respond, but you don't acknowledge it yet in your mind that, oh, I helped this person. Let's say someone is about to cross the road, but you see the oncoming car and you just prevent them from doing it because they are probably blind about it, or they don't see. Other people may think, wow, what a hero. But you are just your natural self. It's a natural human impulse to help one another, to support one another. That's a natural act of help or compassion. If you see someone screaming help and you go there and you don't care about the circumstances or consequences of maybe your help, at that moment you're just selfless. You're just, there is no, selfless means there is no thought of what is going to happen to me. So this is a selfless act. So selfless compassion is also when you choose not to interfere. So in these cases, it's kind of natural to interfere, but there are situations when you see, let's say people complain all the time, people keep on coming and asking for money, but you know that they suffer or they have lack just because of the way they choose to live, the way they choose to be in life. So you might think that you need to be compassionate to them and still keep on helping. But by keeping on helping them, you keep them in bondage. You don't allow them to actually realize the root of their suffering, first of all. nor you allow them to actually go and see the consequences of their choices in life. So this is false compassion. You just feel emotional, you feel sorry for them. A lot of people end up homeless, drug addicts, alcoholics, because they chose trauma over their well-being. They chose self-pity. They chose other things over their well-being. And these substances are only helping them to keep on drowning. So behind any substance abuse, behind any addictive personality, behind any expression, there is a reason. And usually it's trauma, or it's some kind of a inclination of one's personality, which is expressed in a certain way in the world, or plays out in the world through the circumstances, through the communication with people. We can always choose to be different. We can always choose to be authentic, to be ourselves, to be honest. Honest doesn't mean to spill the beans and constantly tell people your secrets. No. Honesty means that you are true to yourself. You express yourself the way you feel. People may say you're kind and compassionate, but you don't choose to tag yourself. Then you're just authentic. If you're authentic, you are kindness, you're compassion, you're goodness naturally. You don't need to act in order to be something. When you act naturally, you are what you are. And that may be interpreted as compassion and love and everything. Good. Or maybe you don't want to communicate with certain people, you draw boundaries. They may say you're bad, but you are yourself. That's your natural way of being. So when you have this natural way of being and self-expression, you don't have this sort of afterthoughts. So true compassion is when it naturally comes out of your being, of your heart, without afterthoughts, or when it comes in a detached manner. You do help others, but you don't start feeling their pain, empathizing. This empathy is a sign of inner emptiness. People think that narcissists are opposite to empaths. Not at all. They are one and the same. There's a different side of corrupt ego. An empathic person is absolutely narcissistic. It's just that they are connected to the side to promote goodness within themselves, a sense that I am good, because they don't believe actually they're good. They don't know maybe that they're good. So they need to be so helpful and sensitive, but inside they're angry, dissatisfied, envious, compare themselves, and so on and so forth. Again, we created so many categories, so many different forms of healthy and unhealthy identity. These are rooted in one and the same corrupt being. It's the identity, the corrupt identity that hides behind different masks, that creates corrupt pathways and corrupt way to transmit itself, because it hides. It cannot express its natural being. It's afraid of natural expression. Because maybe at some point when it tried to express itself naturally, it was hurt. So it thought that to express itself naturally is going to lead to pain, to dissatisfaction. So it started creating new pathways, which are unnatural ways of expression, unnatural ways of being. So if a person chooses to empathize with someone without actually seeing the root causes of these people's problems, they're just stuck, or they become stuck in this emotional reality where they continuously roam in this sort of pity, sadness, and then joy and sadness again, and all these emotions which they can't process, can't face. So they need to connect to similar souls, to wounded souls. They feel this sort of impulse to help them, to empathize, to be a part of their journey. But this is a traumatic impulse. It's a response. It's not spiritual. It's spiritual corruption. Positive spiritual corruption, which can bound or bind the person even more. Because it seems to be good. It's validated by the society. So the ego that is created through this sort of spiritual act of compassion or act of kindness is even more dangerous for the corrupt souls. Because they create this good image about themselves, and they hide away from negative emotions. They shun them, they repel. They don't want to talk about this. All they want to do is just put on pink glasses and roam in the world of illusions. Our life is going to be great. We're going to ascend. We're going to heal. Well, a long way to go. Before you face yourself and your own corruption, your own delusion, your own escapism, your own little safe homes that you created, spiritual umbrellas, different shelters that you've created for yourself, you cannot come out of this delusion. It can be a very positive and even rewarding delusion, but still delusion. Usually these people are fearful. They're afraid to be sick. They're afraid to be hurt. That's why they are with sick and hurt people. They want to help them. We want to do something. It's the way, consciously, subconsciously, to stay away from this. They can't face it within themselves, that fear, that corruption. And corruption doesn't mean that it's necessarily negative. Corruption means something that doesn't allow you to see the reality for what it is, and the corrupt reality for what it is. So it's kind of like a blend of just unconscious existence, where we just choose a role, choose a mask or many masks and live through them. So we're never authentic. We're never ourselves. Our spirituality is not authentic. We have religious masks, we have spiritual masks. But if each and every being who wears these masks looks within themselves and faces and realizes and admits their corruption, we will probably lose all the religions, all this spirituality that exists at the moment, because they would realize that there's still those little corrupt, traumatized boys and girls who are trying to play spirituality, who are trying to play magicians, who are trying to play yogis and evolved beings, who are trying to play Gaia or unicorns and stay in this illusionary world. And most of the time, they choose these spiritual substances, or they start abusing natural substances. Well, everything is natural anyways and came originally from nature. Ancient Romans and Egyptians, ancient meaning some 5, 6, 7,000 years ago, already knew all these things. They already knew natural substances, hallucinogenic substances. But again, this is not a reference, because it was already the beginning of the age of corruption, Kali Yuga at that time. So it's not something that we should look at as an example or as a standard. So by choosing to play with these substances, they think that they're opening themselves to something spiritual. They're opening themselves to the realm of occulted traumas, their own traumas in the collective, to the occulted past, which still exists in the collective consciousness, but which we are not consciously aware of. So they start opening themselves without having that energetic spiritual intelligence, spiritual capacity to actually decipher all that which they are maybe viewing through the hallucinogenics or experiencing. So the result of it is delusion. The end result is, again, mental sickness, mental hospital, because it's too much to digest for a limited consciousness. You can't view that pain of the collective being in a limited sense yourself. You view your own pain, the collective pain, and so most of the people just go crazy, psychotic. Or they live in some kind of unreal paradigms which disconnects them, ungrounds them, disconnects them from the physical reality. So they stop taking care of their body. They are all over the place. They don't really know who they are. They can't find themselves. They start going from one community to the other. They're looking for something they can't really understand. It's because they're not rooted within themselves. If you're witnessing the ancient history or knowledge or whatever you're witnessing there, when you're refined, when your emotions are refined, when you're not traumatized anymore, that's a different experience. But when you try to peep into something mystical or from ancient times without being really aware of who you are right now and what you represent, that's dangerous. And so is that false compassion. So people actually become super compassionate sometimes through drugs. Is that true compassion? It's because it is not even compassion. It's just that they experience temporarily some sort of neutral state. So the conditions fall off, but they can't maintain it. That's our natural being. It doesn't matter how you arrived to experience it. Between our sleep and wakeful state, we experience these glimpses. When we just like all of a sudden like stare at the wall for a while, we may also experience this, like these are moments of neutrality. We don't recognize them for spiritual experiences because they're very short. But these beings, they can induce the states, or they can naturally experience it. You may have sometimes a cup of green tea and also experience it. So you can have some herbs which are calming and tranquilizing. You can experience this anyhow. The point is not experience. The point is knowing what it is and understanding that this is the tool to refine the corruption. This is not the goal. All this love and compassion, these are not goals. Ultimate reality, this is not, this is natural being. This is our natural being. Through this being, we are to live everyday life. We are to refine ourselves. We are to look at our traumas in a different way. We are to look at ourselves in a different way. That's what the awakening is for. To face your pain. Now, to awaken, you need to have courage. Not only just to experience, to have these glimpses, to realize what that is for. And then to have courage to face yourself. If you are just awakened, okay, you will chase these moments of equanimity and neutrality. They are not achievements. They're not going to lead you anywhere. It's like a trap. If you don't know what to do with it, you won't be able to refine yourself. These are the glimpses of the natural being at first. So by going into absorption, meditative absorption, You are to come out and to realize your corruption in day-to-day activity. By realizing, you need to admit it first. So you need to have that humility, that kind of meekness within yourself, that surrender to the higher being, so that you can actually admit it to yourself. Spiritual evolution is not to create another big ego out of us. It's not to become something like most of the people foolishly think. It's not to become that loving, compassionate being, or the being who like does this and that. If it's not your natural being, then don't become anything. You can't become actually anything. You can just create another mask, another tag. I'm spiritual, I'm compassionate, I'm awakened. True awakened beings, they face pain, they refine themselves. And it doesn't mean that you have to face hardships necessarily. The hardships become natural way of purgation of your corruption. It's not something that has to be inflicted, like your previous question about hardships. Like, is hardship or suffering necessary for spiritual evolution? No, but in this day and age, it's but inevitable. That's why most of the highly evolved beings told their students, now because, or adepts, now like Tilopa said Naropa in the Song of Tilopa at the beginning, now because you suffered so much and had these hardships, it's not because of hardships per se, but because through these experiences, they've realized their corruption, they realized their falsehood and let it go. Because they let it go, they've accomplished, what did they accomplish? The highest degree of humility. And because of this highest degree of humility, they are intelligent, because high intelligence is the highest degree of humility. And that is the door and the highest pathway to further evolution. Only this. All this selflessness and simplicity and wisdom are impossible without the highest degree of humility. And this is what the majority of people don't understand. How can they understand when they're blinded by their corruption? When they have spiritual experiences, their ego arises and wants to become something, wants to explain it, wants to hold on to this experience. How does it matter whether it's spiritual or not spiritual experience? Experience is the experience. It's here. Next moment, it's not here. Why do you need to hold on to it? Why do you need to make something out of it? You become the past. The moment you hold on to that experience, you become that experience. That becomes your living entity that possesses you. Because you've created another identity, another little identity about that experience. Another little mask behind which you hide. Now, that's it. You stopped right there and right then. And then. Because there is no future anymore. As long as you cannot let go of the past of these experiences and yourself in those experiences, there is no future. That's why you will keep on aging, despite the fact that you're practicing your pranayamas for thousands of hours, you practice your, I don't know, running in the snow, dipping yourself in the cold water, I don't know, some kind of other practices you may do, taking herbs, doing this, doing that, hatha yoga, retaining your breaths and so on. You cannot be highly evolved by controlling your breath. This is what the corrupt teachers will teach you, or those who interpret the scriptures in a corrupt way. Why they interpret them in a corrupt way? Because they have no experience, they have no reference. So they assume. They interpret words, but they can't understand and link these words in a way that these words would transmit the uncorrupt message, uncorrupt experience. That's the difference. The breath becomes subtle by itself. That's called vasi in Siddha Yoga, or the knowledge of highly evolved beings. Siddhas are highly evolved beings. Doesn't matter where they're born on, the heritage, external heritage. The subtle breath is not something you can practice. It's not pranayama, it's not retention or some kind of forceful action. It is the level of consciousness where the consciousness does not disperse itself outwards. And because it doesn't emphasize anything within its scope of awareness, it remains dwelling in its own being, in its own place within. And thus the breath becomes subtle naturally. Their presence become compassionate or interpreted by others as compassionate and loving and blessing naturally. There is no intent. Intent tangles us. Or if there is a certain intent, you have to step out of that situation right after. The experience is just the experience. It comes and it goes. You can't let it go. You are in bondage. To live freely means to have experiences and to let them go within one's consciousness, first of all. To let them go within one's consciousness will result in your body, in your relaxed body. Your body will be relaxed, because when you can't let go of experiences, the nervous system stays contracted. It holds on to different experiences and it becomes like a chain reaction. The chain of experiences and reactions stored in your nervous system. To be free means consciousness dwells in its own self and the body is relaxed. The body feels balanced. The body rejuvenates naturally through this connection with the higher being.